Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the video, and today we're going to be taking a look at this guy. This is the RunCam Eagle 2. You can just see some of the stats on the side here. It says it has 5 to 36 volt power input. We have a 130 degree field of view. I think this is the 2.5 millimeter lens version. I think they also have a 2.3 maybe. And now this camera does come in 4x3 and 16x9. I have the 16x9 version here. So let's just open it up, see what we get. Greeted by the camera right away. Then we should get some extras underneath here. Yep, we do. Looks like we just have the standard cable to adjust the camera settings that RunCam has. Looks like we have a little aluminum mounting bracket there. A bunch of spare screws and nuts and washers to mount the camera, as well as a different back plate. It looks like, because this one has the sides, these extra holes on it, but they do give you a spare back plate that does not have them if that won't fit into your frame, which is very nice. It looks like we have a little extension cable for the OSD cable. There's the OSD cable, little aluminum bracket, and we have our camera cable with both identical ends right there. And then this is a closer look at the extra back plate without those little mounting nubs on there. Now this camera does have a metal case, and I can tell right away that this is a very heavy camera. Let me actually weigh this guy. It just feels so heavy. Let's just put it on the scale, and it weighs 18.73 grams. That's heavy. And just for comparison, here's a normal HS1177 with the GoPro 2.5mm lens on it. That only weighs 14.5 grams, so we're 4 grams lighter, and then we have a micro camera, which weighs 5 grams. So we're basically almost 15 grams heavier using this metal-cased Eagle 2. So if we take a look at the back of it, it follows suit with other RunCam models. We have the two separate ports split up. We have our 5 to 36 volt input, ground, and then video, so red, black, yellow there. And then on the other side we have the other ground and OSD port, which this little extension just plugs in, or you could use the you can plug the OSD cable directly in. However, if you want to plug this in and then leave it on your quad and like just bundle it up somewhere, so that way it's easier to plug in, you don't have to take your quad apart to access this port. That's nice that they give you the option for that. So as you can see on the side, they do have the sort of 3 mounting hole system, well 4 if you count this one. And I'm not really a fan of that because there are several frames like my Beast X frame. This type of mounting is exactly what the Foxeer Aero V3 and Monster V2 I think have. And I couldn't fit it into some frames because they're expecting, some of the frames are just expecting like a single hole in the middle and then it to be flat on this side. So I actually had to take a file and grind those sides down to use in some of my frames. So just make sure you pay attention to what frame you have and if it's going to fit in or not. So the great thing about this, sharing the exact same wiring as their other cameras, is I can just directly unplug the RunCam Micro, which I have in here, and just plug this guy straight in to test in my floss build. So let's do that. And there we go. I have the RunCam Eagle 2 installed into my floss. Like I said, super easy because they keep all the wires the same for the RunCam, so it was literally just take the micro out, put the different, obviously I need a different camera mount, just screw that on and plug the new camera right in. You can see I still have enough room to get all the up tilt and angle I want, and I didn't have, with a TPU mounting like this, didn't have any issues with the triple hole mounting or having to take the back plate off. It just fit straight in. See, it's a little close to the top, but I could move that down a little bit. So let's take this out and get some flight footage from it. Okay, so here we are starting off with footage from the RunCam Eagle 2. This is fully stock. Hopefully you can see on the trees there sort of the shimmering effect that you get. You can see the picture right now is very blue, but it warms up in just a second here. And that flickering you see, I apologize for that. My DVR is just going crazy on me. I'm not going to be using the DVR in these goggles anymore if it continues to put out results like this, because as you'll see throughout the footage, the flickering and shaking, that was not there at all. It was beautiful when I was looking at it in the goggles, and now it looks like trash in the DVR, so I apologize for that. But just looking around, and now if you do notice, this is in a 4x3 picture here. The goggles only record in 4x3 for the DVR. I'm just looking up and down to test the changes in light. The camera is 16 by 9, by the way, though, so it is a little bit of squashing the image. But just overall, I can't really notice in the goggles much more resolution, probably because the screens themselves don't have the extra resolution. But looking at the trees here and some finer details in lower light situations, the camera does pick up things better than a normal CCD tends to. We have the Eagle again at a little bit of a higher or a lower camera tilt. I believe this was 25 or 30 degrees. You can see the props are now in view, even with the small field of view on the 2.5 lens. Just doing some freestyle here. Quite interesting how it represents the props there compared to a more standard camera. But overall, I found it plenty flyable. I tried the Foxeer Monster V2, and for some reason I can't hardly fly at all with that camera. I pretty much crash into everything, but with this camera it felt pretty normal. I did feel like I was lacking a little bit of the vertical field of view, especially at this lower camera tilt though, with the 16 by 9 sensor. Okay, now we have the Eagle 2 at a sunset condition here to test the low light handling. And overall, it's actually pretty good. If you look at when it settles in, right now, you can see it represents the shadows in the sky. Look at that, that's beautiful. But if I look up and down, you can see how it flashes white. When it's changing really quickly, I find that it just all goes to crap. But you see, look at that. You can't see for a whole second before the camera adjusts. Once it adjusts, it looks absolutely fantastic. Look at that image. But then you try and move, and you can't see anything anymore. Again, really sorry for the DVR, it's awful. Now here we have the RunCam Micro in the exact same flight conditions. You can see it doesn't represent the shadows as well, but looking up and down, it doesn't flash, and it just transitions a lot more smoothly in different light handling conditions. And you can also take a look at the much wider field of view and how it represents the props without cutting them up like the Eagle does. Alright, so that was all of the flight footage from the RunCam Eagle 2. And now just to really quick sum it up, honestly I'm not that impressed with this camera. The overall quality, the resolution of the picture did seem a little bit higher, but I am running AOMWay commanders, so I don't think those are high enough resolution to really take advantage of it, but in general it just seemed, I don't know, it just didn't seem much better, and there was a bit of shimmering to the image, but I know you can change some of the settings to help that a little bit with the edge sharpening. And once again, I apologize for the DVR. Once again, with my AOMWay commanders, I have no idea what's going on. The DVR is just absolutely terrible with the white flickering and rolling. It wasn't like that when I got them, but the DVR is pretty much useless at this point. But that's not representative of the camera, obviously. Now, it is a 2.5mm lens, so it does have a decent field of view. However, since it is a 16 by 9 sensor, it's really not that big, and comparing it, you could see from the different flights. Normally I fly with the RunCam Micro here, and I can always see my props no matter what angle I'm at. For the Eagle here, I was about 30, maybe 40 degrees angle, and my props weren't in view at all. So it definitely is a smaller field of view, especially up and down. The wide field of view on the sides is pretty decent, but I found a lot of times that I was having to look up. I couldn't see far enough up, so that's why if you are going to get this camera, I highly recommend going with the 4x3 version in the 2.1mm lens, because again with the commanders, these can do 4x3 and 16 by 9, and I fly all 4x3 cameras, but I do like flying the goggles in 16 by 9, so the goggles, you know, stretches the image. I just find that's more comfortable for me to look at, and I'm used to the little bit of distortion it adds. And with the 4x3 sensor, it still gives you the very nice vertical field of view. As you can see, I also did test this in low light evening, you know, sort of sunset conditions, because RunCam specifically asked, they specifically told me to do low illumination tests, and it was kind of interesting because I thought it performed pretty awful there. You can see it did, when it transitioned from light to dark, I kind of looked up and looked down at the sun and then at the ground, and it was just like all white, and then it would come in, and it was all black, and then it would come in, so it didn't transition fast enough. It kind of waited like a half second, so I really don't think that's good at all. But if you steadily looked at something, say I looked at the sunset, everything came into view very nice and it was really beautiful to look at, or if I'm looking at the ground. But if you're transitioning quickly, it just can't keep up since this is a CMOS sensor and they do worse in changing light conditions versus a standard CCD camera like the Swift Micro. So overall, I just really am not going to be able to recommend this for mini quad use. I think we just change and flip around, and it looks at different lighting conditions too often for this guy to keep up, and I really do prefer a CCD camera over that. And right now, my favorite camera probably is the Foxeer Micro, or the Foxeer Mini Aero. This one has the voltage OSD on it, and I just find that it gives me, it's still like 9 grams, so it's not as light as Micro, but it's still a light camera. The best field of view with low distortion on this lens, and I just really like the form factor. Or either of the Micro cameras out right now. I just really was not a huge fan of this camera overall. And it is also $45, so it is about, $15, $10 more expensive than normal cameras. However, if you are doing wing or plane flying, this might be something that interests you with the high resolution, especially if you're just cruising along, you're not moving all around and flipping like a mini quad. It might be a better option for you and something to consider. So that was the end of the review. Thank you to Banggood for sending it in. There will be a link down below to check it out if you're interested. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.